Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel and welcome to my new series, My Thoughts. So as I said, I'm trying to do more MCU related content outside of my Power Level series. So for the meantime, this is going to be the series that I'll be doing intermittently, following a new series conclusion and so on and so forth. And basically what I'll be doing is I'll be giving my thoughts on an MCU series and then ranking them in terms of where I think they fit in the overall structure of that particular phase. So I will only be starting with phase 4 for now. I don't think I'll be going back and doing any of the previous series. I might. Let me know in the comments if you'd like to see that based on how this video goes. But for now, I'm going to be starting with the Disney Plus series since She-Hulk just officially concluded, and we now have seen all 7 of the Disney Plus shows that I'll be reviewing. Those include WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, Hawkeye, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, and She-Hulk. I'm going to rank them from 1 being, in my opinion, the best Disney Plus show to 7, in my opinion, being the worst Disney Plus show. So we're starting with She-Hulk today just because it just ended. And then for the next few weeks, I'll be going through the remaining 6 other shows and ranking them. I'll also be doing this with the movies. Granted, Wakanda Forever is not out yet, so I'll probably be doing a post update once we have Wakanda Forever to share my thoughts. Now, let's jump into She-Hulk. So, right off the bat, I think it's important to mention that out of the original 6 Avengers, I think the 2 characters that have gotten the worst end of the stick have been Hulk and Thor. Thor, I believe, has been made into sort of a buffoon character. He always sort of had a goofy side to him, but they have really dumbed down his character to the point where he's almost unrecognizable from the first movie. And Hulk, I know there's been a lot of back and forth about whether the Professor Hulk was a good idea or a bad idea. I'm not really here to debate that, but my point being, a lot of people have been unhappy with how those 2 characters in particular have been represented. And Marvel had a interesting opportunity to sort of rewrite the ship with She-Hulk because they were introducing the cousin of Bruce Banner and, most importantly, another Hulk into the MCU. And that, in and of itself, presented a lot of opportunities to sort of explore how Hulks are viewed now that Bruce Banner has sort of become a hero and not really a villain, and so on and so forth. And for the most part, I think there were a lot of good things this show did. I think there were a lot of things this show did not do well. I'm going to steer away from all of the social media criticism and the show calling out social media criticism. While that is an important aspect of the show, I'm going to really focus on just the elements of the show I enjoyed and didn't enjoy. And I'll also be giving you my personal favorite episode and my overall least favorite episode as well. So let's start with the pros. I really enjoyed She-Hulk as a character. I think that Tatiana Maslany is an incredible actress. I think that She-Hulk was a extremely likable character. I think that, we saw her at her ups, we saw her at her downs, and throughout it all, I think that each of us could probably have found a way to connect with Jennifer Walters in some form or another. We've all had issues with our self-esteem at some point. We've all felt like we don't belong. We've all felt like there's somebody else who's more popular than us. And I think that in and of itself makes She-Hulk a very relatable character. We got more character development from She-Hulk than we got from the Hulk character, from Professor Hulk, that is, specifically, just in a matter of few episodes. And for that, I think that that's great. I hope that in the future we have more characters that sort of get explored like this, because I think what Marvel's done recently is we've seen characters at their low points and immediately go to their high points, where She-Hulk sort of started at a low point, would go to a high point, then every time she reached a high point, she'd go back down to another low point. And I think that's a very interesting concept for the writers to explore, and I really appreciated that. Despite what some people might say, I also really thought that the major cameos were tasteful. Bruce Banner, for example, I'd say there are four major cameos. You had Bruce Banner, who was really used in the first and then the last episode, and very rarely in the last episode. But he was there, he showed She Hulk how to use her powers, and then they moved on. You have Emil Blonsky, aka the Abomination. They used him where they had to. They did not make him a bigger part of the series than he needed to be, and I really appreciated that. Same with Wong. Wong came in, he had his, 2 episodes of glory. He fit perfectly in the Abomination episode. There was a reason for him to be in there. And there was also a reason for him to be in his episode where they had to find the fake magician. And then lastly, Daredevil. Now, Daredevil, when he was used, I think was fantastic. Having him come in and defend the designer of the suits in the lawsuit was a perfect use of his character. It showed off his intelligence, that he's another lawyer, and it allowed him and She-Hulk to interact in a way that made logical sense. They would logically meet in a courtroom as Jennifer Walters, She-Hulk, and Daredevil because that is their profession. So I think overall the four major cameos I think were very tastefully done. I'll also say that I think the series got better as it progressed. I think it started a little slow. I will concede that. But the final 3 episodes, in my opinion, were some of the best of the series. I think you really got to see She-Hulk's character development. You got to see her reach her high. You got to see her go back to her lows. And then the last episode, I think, was just a perfect, just accumulation of everything that makes her character great. Not only from the comics, but from what we had seen throughout the series. I'll also say, too, just to add in, I really enjoyed how some minor villains and minor characters were used. I'm thinking back to the Emil Blonsky retreat that they did, where there were just a ton of minor supervillains that they introduced out of nowhere, and they really made use of some very strange and out-of-the-ordinary characters from the comics, and I think that in and of itself is really great on the writers. Now, the cons. Titania, I did not think was a bad villain, but I wish we got more of an explanation. I mean, she, I guess, has superhuman strength. I know in the comics she does, but in the series, they sort of she has some superpowers, but not really. I wish that they had fleshed her character out more, because, I mean, again, I know they're trying to make her an influencer, and a very bad influencer at that, but they really didn't explore anything. She was just sort of there, and, we were sort of told to expect, that she was just this bad influencer. I wish we got more backstory, how she got her powers, etc., etc. But, I mean, that's a very, I guess, minor complaint, because, again, Titania really was just a character who would pop up here and there, even though, again, I think she was meant to be the main villain, even more so than Intelligentsia, but again, that's up for debate. One of my biggest issues, arguably the biggest issue I had with the entire show, was how they used Daredevil in marketing. If you remember back to when the initial trailer was released, Daredevil was the huge ending of the She-Hulk trailer. It got everyone hyped, everyone was looking forward to seeing him, and they continued to tease him, but he didn't show up until the second to last episode. And I do have an issue with that. I have an issue with the fact that I think a lot of fans got this false expectation that he was going to be a very large part of the show because they heavily marketed him. It would be sort of like if they had heavily pushed the fact that Bruce Banner was going to be back. He only appeared in the first episode, and, the trailers had made it seem like he was going to be in the series for a long time. Now, I do know there's going to be some of you that will point out, oh, well, Daredevil only appeared at the very end of the trailer. I understand that, but the conversation that came around She-Hulk made it appear that he was going to have a much larger role in the overall series, and I do have an issue with that. I understand why they did it, but I think that is one of the bigger issues with Marvel in this current phase, is they're relying a lot on cameos and surprise characters showing up instead of really focusing on the main character themselves. And I wish they would have just been more honest and, said, hey, you guys can look forward to Daredevil, but don't get your hopes up that he's going to be a main recurring character. And again, that for some of you, that might be a minor nitpick. For me, it was something that really bugged me throughout the show's run. But again, that has much less to do with the overall show itself and just how it was marketed. Lastly, I did think that the show also suffered from some confusing messaging. I understand that the overall message of the show and the overall theme of the show was Jen trying to figure out who she was as She-Hulk. And again, I just think that they dropped the ball here and there with keeping up with that messaging. There were just some episodes where it felt like, Jen was very selfish and really didn't care about her job as a lawyer and so on and so forth, which is just completely, not in line with her character and how she represents herself. We're supposed to believe that she's this, intelligent woman who has trained all her life to be a lawyer and wanted to be a lawyer since she was a little girl. And then at some times it seems like she could just care less about the law. And I think that that was a very difficult thing to, see at times, and that's why I think the messaging was a little off. But overall, again, I think that the episodes were good. There were just times where I scratched my head saying, why would they have made She-Hulk do this or appear this way or, make this decision? So now going on to my favorite and least favorite episode. My favorite episode was episode 8, Ribbit and Rip It. I think that I hope we see more Daredevil and Jen because their chemistry was absolutely amazing. Now, I know there were some complaints about Daredevil's personality and he wasn't exactly how he was portrayed back in the day in the Daredevil Netflix series. I'll be honest, I did not watch the Daredevil Netflix series, but overall, I think he fit the tone of the series very well. Maybe they made him a little more comical, but I think that was because that was the point of the show, was to be a little bit more comical here and there. I also think that this is the first episode where we really got to see Jen be herself. We sort of seen the episode prior at the retreat that she was sort of finding herself and learning to love Jen more. And I think this is the episode where really the identity between Jen and She-Hulk, fully clicked. And it was a great thing to see. And in whatever project she appears in next, I hope we get to continue to see the gradual evolution of her figuring that perfect balance. And again, I hope that she will appear in Daredevil Born Again because the chemistry between the two of them is just amazing. Now, my least favorite episode was episode 5, Mean, Green, and Straight Poured Into These Jeans. One of my least favorite things about it was Mallory Book, specifically when they're leaving the courtroom and she basically tells Jen that she can do better. It feels very backhanded. I know it was supposed to be a sweet moment where both the characters were bonding, but I think the tone of how it came off, it just felt very condescending and just sort of a slap in the face after Jen had been through that really difficult trial where all of her exes were sort of just, ripping on her and telling her that they didn't like her for Jen, they only liked her for She-Hulk. Not to mention Titania's entire just premise of her being in the episode, her whole makeup line, it just seems forced. It doesn't seem natural. How she acts in the courtroom, it's just not good. Again, I think that Titania was used well in some episodes, specifically the wedding episode, just Jen. But I think in this episode, again, I sort of sat there and was like, okay, this genuinely does not make any sense why she's here. So with that being said, again, there are 7 Disney Plus shows that I'll be ranking in this series. And out of the 7, I think that She-Hulk ranks as the 6th best Disney MCU show out of the 7. Again, I know that probably seems like a very low number, and it's just because I think that overall the series did suffer some with the writing and the messaging, and I really enjoyed She-Hulk as a character. I almost wonder if it would have been best if she was just introduced sort of in another series or in another movie. I really don't know the answer to that, but I do think there are some things that hopefully, if we get a season 2 of this show, that they can improve upon. But again, overall, I enjoyed this series. I didn't think it was one of the better MCU shows. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear it in the comments section. And I really appreciate you all watching this. And again, for the next few weeks, I will be reviewing the other Disney Plus shows. I will also be talking about Werewolf by Night and possibly I Am Groot. I will keep that one on the back burner for now. And once we're done with that, I will start talking about the MCU movies from Phase 4, which will lead up to Wakanda Forever. And not only that, it will lead up to my final episode of my Phase 4 Power Level series. But with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for checking out this episode. Share it with a friend, and I will see you all very soon. Take care.